That was a powerhouse panel. We're so grateful to Beverly and Janelle and Liz. A reminder that if you want to post or you're looking for posts about this, hashtag IWD2025 is our handle. In addition, Liz presented some really fantastic data. If you want to have her deck, it's on our IWF Georgia website in the resources section. So IWFGA resources section on our website. And so now that we've set the context, let's talk about overcoming some hurdles. Because we're problem solvers. And we're powerful. And we have some powerful women here to talk to us about money, how women are overcoming hurdles to get it and grow it. I am thrilled to welcome online Miss, I don't see her online yet, but she's coming. I know she's waiting. And there she is, Miss Donata Russell Ross. Welcome. She is the president and CEO. Yes. We'll clap for everyone at the end. She's the president and CEO of one of the country's leading operators of food and beverage concessions. She is also the co-founder and board member of the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs, RICE, here in Atlanta. Woohoo! Ooh, we're going to acknowledge everybody after, right? And welcome to the screen. And in person on our panel, we have Luz Urrutia, who is the CEO of Accion Opportunity Fund, the nation's leading nonprofit providing small businesses with access to capital, networks, and coaching. And she was a founder of Banco de Nuestra Comunidad, a community bank based in Atlanta, serving the underbanked Latina community. And thank you, Carla, for helping me with the pronunciation. I appreciate that. It's a faithful try, but it's a miss oftentimes, so I apologize.
Beautiful.
And our fantastic moderator, Miss Virginia Hepner, who herself is a retired bank executive and has overcome many hurdles. This follows 5 years of being president and chief executive officer at the Woodruff Art Center. She serves on many nonprofit boards, including IWF's, and I myself have learned a great deal. So we welcome these women. Over to you, Virginia.
Thank you, Salima. Well, good morning. You know, I should have learned a long time ago never to follow Dr. Beverly Tatum, but, you know, call me silly. Welcome, Donata. Donata gets the award, the Trooper Award, because she has been ill with COVID and she's protecting all of us, but you look fantastic. So thank you.
The makeup makes a difference.
Can we hear you? Can we hear you, Donata? Well, there you go. We're working on it.
So I was saying makeup does make a difference.
Right. Well, you have your Lauren Bacall voice. I think it's a little deeper today, but thank you. And Luz Urrutia, thank you for being here. Luz lives in California. She lived here for a long time, and we work together. So we have this pact: when someone calls, you have to say yes. And so we're delighted to have you. And
when Virginia calls, you have to say yes.
Okay, we'll take that.
Yes, thank you.
And we're going to let them do a little self-introduction, and then I'm going to augment it because they'll be too modest, probably. But Luz, let me start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So first of all, good morning, everybody. I am delighted to be here. I spend most of my life since I moved from my home country of Venezuela here. So this is a place that holds close to my heart. And I love being in convenings like this, primarily because, you know, we get to listen, we get to share, and we get to learn about the challenges and opportunities that women face every day in building a sustainable financial and healthy life. But I am Luz Urrutia. I'm the CEO and president of Accion Opportunity Fund. And my journey has been interesting because I've always been in the for-profit sector. That's where I met my dear friend, where I started working at the bank. And then I went and formed a bank because I thought there were some problems that needed to be solved in the financial mainstream system here in Atlanta. Then that took me to California to try to build a bank. I worked for a lot of organizations, but one of the things that I realized, and the reason I am now doing the work that I do, is because I believe that when you have a business, you have to look at both margin or profits and mission. And when you bring those two together to coexist, that's when you can have real impact. Sometimes that's really hard to do in the for-profit sector because shareholders always lead. So I thought if I could go to a nonprofit and let the mission lead the financial self-sufficiency of the organization, we might be able to create a model that's long-term, sustainable, impactful, and scalable. And really the reason why I do the work that I do is because I do believe that building a more inclusive financial system, one that meets people where they are, gives them the tools and the resources that they need, and allow them to chart their own path, that is the pathway to success and purpose. And so when you look at entrepreneurship, behind home ownership is the second proven path to building household wealth and financial security. But when entrepreneurs, primarily women, do not get the resources to do that, i.e. capital, coaching, mentorship, it's really hard to begin. And so on the other end, when you give them the resources and you support them and you let them do what they do best, then magic happens. They build successful businesses, they create jobs, and they invest in their local communities.
Thank you, Luz. Thank you for being here. Danita, you're a local girl and incredible family history, and you are still in very, very well into the for-profit world with Concessions International, which is very successful. I think you're in 7 airports across the U.S. And you are a founder of the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurship. So tell us a little bit about you. Introduce us to you a little more.
Sure. I call myself an original Georgia peach.
There you go.
I was born and raised in, can you hear me?
Hold on one sec. How are we doing technology? Should we continue?
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Now, try it now. Thank you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm sorry about this. First of all, let me apologize for not being there in person. I've been dealing with this respiratory illness for a little bit over a week now. But I'm glad that we have technology and I'm able to participate virtually. Yes, I am a Georgia girl. I was born here in Atlanta back in the late 50s. So I've seen the city really change from a small southern town into the remarkable, internationally recognized and loved city that it is now. So it's very, I'm very proud to call Atlanta home and to be able to recognize the works that are happening in this city based on the phenomenal women, who have moved here, like many of you in the room today.
Yeah.
My day job is Concessions International, but Virginia asked me to participate on the panel today to talk a little bit about a legacy project that our family started, honoring our father, the late Herman J. Russell, who was an entrepreneur, but was so passionate and a big believer that entrepreneurship was the way that anyone could build wealth and be successful. Mm-hmm. So when we were looking for a way to honor him, and we had a empty corporate office building on the corner of Northside Drive and Fair Street, we thought about different models and ways to do that. And ultimately, we ended up with creating the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs. So we're really proud about that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, as the morning goes on.
Yeah. For those of you, raise your hand if you know about Herman Russell. Well, that's great. I love that's super. And it was a privilege to be his banker for a long time. And Luce and I worked with Danita, and I have to say that he and a few other people really helped me appreciate how special Atlanta is and was, and actually the journey of what he went through as an entrepreneur, he and your mother and your brothers, and it's one of the highlights of my life to have been able to know him. So thank you. And it's one of the reasons I love Atlanta. And so we've got to do everything we can to live up to his dream, and you're doing it through the Russell Center. So talk to me. So you all, and Danita, I hope you could hear the previous panel. Were you?
I did.
Good. So they shared a lot of information. So what were some of your takeaways? And you all are both focused on entrepreneurship, building wealth, helping people build wealth. And I'd love to hear from your areas what you've learned about, are there any gender differences, frankly? I'd love to hear your perspective on what you're seeing. I'll go with Luce first.
Sure. So, I mean, something hit home for me. A little bit of story about me. As a Venezuelan immigrant, my first experience with the U.S. banking system was that of denial.
There you go.
I asked for a $500 credit card, my first credit card, and I was turned down by the bank where I was working.
God.
Which shall remain unnamed.
Yeah.
And what it was is that my lack of a credit history, a credit score, a 3-digit number, and my immigrant status meant that I was invisible and unbankable. But what I knew is that that experience was not just me. It was part of broader systemic barriers that women and immigrant and underserved communities face day in and day out. And I asked myself, how do you build credit scores? How do you get loans, build financial wealth and assets for yourself and your family if the institutions that are supposed to help you won't do it? But as they say, do something when you see something. That denial gave me the resolve to advocate for underserved communities and really to help solve a very big problem, which is access to capital and resources for underserved communities and women-owned businesses. So fast forward 21 years, I decided that it was time, and that's when I co-founded a bank to help Latinos in the Atlanta area that were underserved and unbanked, consumers and small businesses that did not have credit or had thin files and really had been left out by the mainstream financial system. And so when I look 23 years later, which is where we are today, the challenges that I faced, the challenges that customers that we helped then faced, are still being addressed. Access to capital, lack of mentorship, and lack of resources. And so if we want to build a more inclusive financial system where everybody has opportunities to get ahead, we've got to solve these problems, right? This has been going on for too long, and I would love to say that here I sit 23 years later and that we have made substantial progress. We have not. And we see it every day in the people that we work with and the women that we serve, and how women, you know, there's research, right, that women are giving lower quality information when they go to banks to apply for a loan. And when you look at what they are asked for, they're asked for more information, and in many cases they're told no more so than their white male counterparts. And you know, I can continue to talk about, and we'll get into it more, but there is clearly disparity. And so when I hear, you know, that women are getting ahead, that they're generating more, at the grassroots level, I don't see that. I don't see that for women that are trying to build businesses, that are trying to support families, that are trying to juggle so many things in one day.
We'll get to more about Accion in a minute, but Danita, talk a little bit about, well, tell us about RICE, Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurship, and what the strategy was created, and what are the components of it?
Well, RICE is a nonprofit center, 54,000 square feet, dedicated to providing uncommon access and opportunity to African American, primarily, stakeholders. And our whole focus is around the concept that, and this is what resonated with me earlier, that access to wealth is really not, there's no equality there. So for us, it's really important that we create an environment where our stakeholders can have uncommon access to the resources that they need to be ready for the opportunities when they present themselves. So there's focus not only on trying to meet the stakeholder and we call our members stakeholders, by the way. It's really more about trying to meet our stakeholders at the point where they are. Many of them are just starting a business, whereas others have scaled. But we try to meet them at the point where they are and provide the resources through a platform, a learning platform that we've developed. So it's a unique center in that you can walk in and there's a sense of community. There's a sense of resources, partnerships, collaborations that really create an environment where our stakeholders can learn.
Yeah. And my takeaway is it's very much a mentoring, enveloping these members to help with coaches who've been successful entrepreneurs, right? And with the whole mission of growing wealth and helping accelerate their growth. Is that right?
Yes, that's a key component to it. And in fact, over the past several years, we've expanded the platform to include more one-on-one mentoring, because that is a critical part of providing just the, not just the educational and academic foundation for that, but creating a sense of togetherness and support. And that mentoring is a key important part of that.
Someone who has their back, right? And tell us about the gender breakdown.
Actually, 60% of the stakeholders are female at the Russell Center. And it is really, I think it's very interesting that the women may be anywhere from someone who may be a barber, a woman. I actually know someone who's a barber, all the way to an individual who has scaled and has a water company where she provides alkaline water to the nation. And in fact, internationally, she started distributing her products. So it's a wide variety of stakeholders at the Rice Center.
Mm-hmm. And what's the capital structure of Rice? How are you funded? It's a nonprofit.
It's a nonprofit. The majority of our funding comes through grants. We've been fortunate to raise over $16 million in our latest campaign. And a part of that is capital in order to improve the building. But the majority of the money comes from foundations, corporations, and lastly, individuals.
And I'll ask you the same question, Luce, but given the current environment of certainly federal funding, perhaps other public funding, what are you anticipating? What are you dealing with? What are the impacts so far?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think the verdict is still out. Fortunately, we have been told by the majority of our corporate sponsors that they will honor the pledges that they've made to us. I think the future is where we've really are going to have to wait and see. But my belief is that the work is so important, and the impact of the work that we do is so transformative that the work will speak for itself over time. So we are making adjustments. We get quite a bit of federal funding.
Yeah.
So that's and that's mostly on the capital side.
Yeah.
And we are concerned because of our focus. You know, we are unapologetically focused on developing Black business.
Yeah.
And that is something that is not looked upon favorably at this time, but it's needed. So the work is important, and we are dedicated to continuing that and trying to find a way to make that successful.
At a minimum, it's at risk. Right? Yeah. Luz, explain what AO is.
So Accion Opportunity Fund, AOF, we are a leading community development financial institution. How many of you have heard of CDFIs? Okay, good.
Very informed crowd.
Impressive. And our focus is really, we exist to advance economic mobility for underserved small businesses by providing, again, affordable capital, business advising, and support networks.
And just to add, the Treasury Department assigns CDFIs status as a nonprofit, and is a critical element. And that, we'll see what happens with that designation. So.
Absolutely. And what that means, that certification, is that at least 60% of the dollar loans and the units that go to underserved communities, so low income, Black, and Latino. Nearly 90% of the businesses that we work with are owned by women, people of color. And
90%?
90%,
okay.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the many challenges that a small business faces when they're going out and asking for a $100,000 loan or less is that they face a $100 billion gap every year, okay? And so that means that 79% of small businesses in the US have unmet financing needs. And while this problem is a problem for small businesses, it's even more of a problem for women-owned businesses. And for women of color, it's even a bigger problem, right? Another thing that we do is we advocate for more fair and transparent policies and practices at the federal and state levels, and we produce our own research to show the barriers that women face, how to overcome those challenges, and then to give awareness and clarity to when you support women in business, it makes economic, business, and social sense. So why the heck are more people not doing it? And that's why, you know, we are very active about that. I'll tell you about what we've done. You know, since our inception, we've deployed over $1 billion. And these are very tiny loans. And it's 34,000 loans. We are very intentional about measuring the impact of our activities on the work that we do. We do third-party independent research on the jobs that our loans create. For every loan that we give, it helps to create or retain 2 jobs. For every dollar that's invested in the community, it helps, and in Georgia, it's even greater, $2.17 of increased wages, spending, and tax revenues. The other thing that we do, because we believe that capital alone might not be enough, so combining it with business coaching, educational assistance, that's really what drives financial security and economic mobility for the businesses that we serve. Last year, we served over 1 million entrepreneurs with access to our online digital coaching, webinars, one-on-one networking events. And so, you know, women are a big target of our organization. 40% of our lending goes to women. On our programming, 69% of the participants are women. And we have found that consistently, and you know, they all do their homework and they come prepared and they, you know, report. And then the other thing is we do grant programs that we match with educational programs. 80% of the grants last year went to women-owned businesses.
And Luz, on the experience on loan loss, what are the experiences you have?
So we now measure before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. Before COVID, we were collecting about 94 cents of every dollar. right? If you think about any bankers in the room, you know, banks do not lend to these communities because they're too risky. I've got to say, I've been doing this for 25 years. That's not my experience, but maybe it's just me, you know?
No, I think it's a fact.
Yeah, and so obviously during COVID, you know, we gave a lot of payment relief, support, grants, PPP loans, and that grew to about 15% losses, and now they're all coming back down again. You know, this model is about giving a hand up, right? It's not about giving hands out. These are people that really have a lot of grit, determination, and want to build success, and all they need is a little bit of help to get them over the hill.
And how is your organization funded?
Yeah, so we have a balance sheet of about $250 million. You know, we've deployed over $1 billion, but our balance sheet sits at 250 is because these loans are small loans and they turn over really, really fast. And we fund the organization a variety of ways. One thing that I will tell you that since I got there 7 years ago, I've been very intentional in making this organization financially self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Because I do believe philanthropy is a thing of beauty. But you cannot build a lending business with the erratic nature of philanthropy. And so philanthropy is good for coaching and advising because it's free, right? Policy and advocacy. But when you're trying to scale a lending organization, philanthropy becomes a challenge. So we get 85% of our budget is covered by earned revenue, which for a nonprofit is pretty unusual. Yeah. And then we raise philanthropy from corporations and individuals for operating capacity. And we also raise debt capital. We raise a lot of debt capital from banks, from foundations and family offices, accredited investors, both institutionals and individuals. And that is the money that we use to lend. And then as businesses pay us back, we recycle that and we give it to a new business. So it's a really, you know, powerful model.
I'm so proud of you, Luz. I have to say.
I learned everything from you,
No,
my friend.
you did not. But talk about the current environment. We talked a little bit before about, for example, SBA loans, right? And you intersect with your regulated industries, et cetera. Talk about what's happening to you now, what you perceive may happen. How do you navigating this?
Yeah. So, you know, I've said to the team, and we have a group of 140 colleagues that wake up every day just thinking about how to improve the lives of entrepreneurs, is look, I have to keep my eyes on the horizon because there's a lot of water coming into this boat that can sink it, right? And there's not enough buckets or people to take it out right now. So let's keep our eye on the horizon. Let's make sure that we understand what's real and what's noise. As a CDFI, there's a lot of support on both sides of the aisle, but right now, everything that does underserved communities is being attacked. And so from, you know, when I got to the organization, 25% of our funding for operating capacity was coming from the federal government. And now it's less than 3%. And because I knew that at some point we were putting our business in the hands of others with no control, and that's not a good place to be, especially when you're trying to do the work that we do. We have other programs that are government funded, like tax credits, which are supporting nonprofits in housing and, you know, affordable housing and healthcare services, which if they go away, that's going to be real troublesome. But I tell you what the biggest challenge is. As a CDFI, we get to certify to banks that the activity and the lending that we do is enabled CRA, Community Reinvestment Act. How many of you know what CRA means? CRA is basically a law that requires to some degree, but encourages banks to invest in the communities in which they are taking deposits from. Banks don't lend to the businesses that we work with.
Hold on one sec, Luz. I think we're having a sound issue.
Thank you. Banks don't lend. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Banks don't lend to the businesses that we lend to, but they lend to us so that we can lend to them. If the CDFI fund certification were to go away, guess what? Banks no longer have a way to validate that. So all of the lending that we get at subsidized rates to provide capital goes away.
Yeah.
And then the whole CDFI industry, about 1,000 of us, providing billions of dollars a year to underserved communities across affordable housing, small business, et cetera, goes away. That's a big risk.
That is, the ripple effect of that is incredible.
Totally.
I'm personally just involved in the West Side Future Fund, which is really focused on housing, and tax credits are an essential tool and have been incredibly effective across America. It's one of the greatest policy decisions I think this country's ever made to help housing, economic development, and grow wealth. And if that goes away, it would be incredibly foolish. So part of this conversation is to help you all understand where we would recommend advocating for certain things. And it's not a political issue. If you care about economic development, which I think this country does, these are really important policy nuances that both sides of the aisle created
100%.
and support. So.
And the interesting thing, when you look at tax credits and where projects have been funded, the vast majority have been in red states.
Have been what?
In red states,
Yeah, oh, by far.
right? So, again, hopeful.
Yeah, but know the facts,
Know the
right?
facts.
And advocate, so. Danita, what takeaways from our earlier conversation about women and wealth creation? Because you run a very successful for-profit business too. I'd love to hear your perspective on your employees, on how they've participated in wealth creation, and your personal philosophy about that.
Well, from a for-profit standpoint, ironically, our business is very much entry level from an employee standpoint. So 85% of my workforce, honestly, are hourly employees.
Yeah.
And it's really refreshing for me to have 25, 30-year employees, not year old, but employees who have worked for us for 25 and 30 years, who have been able to educate their children, buy homes, and are now, frankly, grandparents. So, the entry-level workforce is critical to the overall economic success of this country. And I believe that because we are a family business and we spend a lot of time making sure that our employees know that they are an extended part of our family, we create that environment where they feel comfortable and we support them as much as we can. And we try to be fair from a wages and benefits standpoint and all of that. So that, that's foundational. But as we talk about the future of America and how entrepreneurship is going to be a critical component of wealth creation for anyone, I'm reminded of how important it is to create an environment where people feel like they are supported, and they do have access and some equality in the system. And that's why the work that we do at Rice is so important. I would say that wealth creation really is going to come primarily from people owning their own businesses in the future. And we talked about being able to pass wealth on from generations to generations. And honestly, that starts with home ownership. Actually being able to be in a position where you can buy a house. So I think the work that we do and the work that we're all talking about, is important. And, we just have to stay focused on that.
Yeah. Do you, and we'd had time, I was going to ask Liz about home ownership. One of the fascinating things about economic history in the United States anyway is the wealth creation because of home ownership. I mean, frankly, it's been a very heavily subsidized industry by by tax deductions for mortgage interest, et cetera. And there is a housing crisis at every income level other than the highest incomes. And it made me wonder about are there entrepreneurship opportunities that you're seeing in the housing sector? Are any of your entrepreneurs working on anything that's particularly interested in? Because when there's a crisis, there's also an opportunity. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing any of that.
You know, there's some unique ideas out there around creating a supportive, collaborative system where different groups can come together and try to apply for grants and funding around sort of a workforce housing model where everybody comes together. But it requires all those things that you talked about earlier, like the tax credits. It's very hard to get a model like that done without outside support.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to be creative as we move forward and just kind of wait and see where we're going with all the changes that are happening. And it is going to take collaboration and all of us coming together and bringing sort of our areas of expertise to the table and open dialogue and discussion around what we might be able to do to shake this thing up.
It's a lot. I think we were talking earlier about the childcare situation, right? There is not a market solution that's pure market oriented that can have people paid well enough to be skilled in childcare and be able to be affordable for people. So that's, to me, when public policy, public-private partnerships make sense, just like what you're talking about. I would say housing is the same. If we don't have tax credit lending for particularly nonprofit developers, they can't afford to build additional housing. So what's on the radar for AOF now?
You know, we just launched, we're 6 months into our next 5-year strategic plan. Clearly, when we put this plan together, we did not know the tsunami that was coming. So we are, you know, our goal, I mean, it's taken us almost 30 years to deploy $1 billion. And this 5-year plan calls for us to deploy almost that. So what took us 30, we're now going to try to do it in 5 because the need is clearly, you know, more substantial. Doing our lending and our coaching around the country and really employing sort of a, you know, you asked about credit risk, right? Yeah. A lot of people ask the question, how in the world can your organization deploy that amount of capital to businesses that traditional lenders say no to because they're too risky?
And too small to make money.
And too small to make money. They're not profitable, or industries are, you know, in places that too risky, et cetera. And predatory lenders take them on, right, and charge them exorbitant rates that put them out of business. And so, you know, as we look into, and we've already done a lot of this, we are investing an enormous amount on risk scoring, data analytics, AI, underwriting methodologies that really help us sort through how to lend to more businesses that other people say no to. We've invested in a digital platform, so today we can reach customers literally where they are on their devices across different time zones and in their language. And so we believe that that level of investment is important to help solve some of that, chip away at some of that $100 billion gap that exists every year. You know, I want to underscore this, that when a business gets told no for credit, they're going to more than likely end up in the hands of a predatory lender.
Yeah.
Okay? And we did a study a few years ago, it's on our website, and you can go look at it, on affordable and unsustainable. And we looked at loan contracts that these small businesses had. And the average annual percentage rate was 94%.
Wow. Okay?
And the average monthly payment on their debt was 2 times their net income. So these are the times, right, when predators come in to prey because they see that the industry is in disarray. And that's what we're trying to combat every day, because all they're doing is taking out economic gains and benefits that these businesses need and have that really stop their ability to grow and thrive and succeed.
That's a great point, Luz. So you also, in your spare time, serve on the Community Foundation Board in California, in Silicon Valley is the name. And that's, share a little the size and scope of what that entity is.
Yeah, so they're the largest community foundation in the world. About 14 billion in assets.
Yeah.
All the names that you see in the news these days, that's who holds.
All the tech bros.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. That's
Right.
who holds,
Yeah, funded the Community Foundation.
Absolutely. And so, living in Silicon Valley, and I have to say that was a shock. I had to learn a new language. I literally, I tell myself that I've learned 3 different languages. I came to this country, I had to learn English. Then I was in Georgia, I had to learn Southern. And then I went to California, and I had to learn Silicon Valley language. And it's been quite the experience. But look, it's a wonderful organization, and it deploys billions and billions of dollars, which is, I think a lot of people recognize that in local communities. Oops, okay, I'm sorry. Did anybody hear anything I said? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
okay, good.
I hate to repeat it.
Yeah.
But they do an incredible work in the local communities. And you think California, the largest state here,
Yeah.
the challenges that we have are unsurmountable, right? Housing, multiply it,
Yeah.
right? Food insecurity, healthcare, education.
The environment.
Environment. And so very focused, really focused on, the community, serving the community first.
So let me and I'll ask both of you this question. Because of changing regulations, changing policies, and I serve on some nonprofit boards as well, they're under attack, frankly, in terms of, are what we're doing legal or not legal? What's the positioning? And you were sharing that the foundation itself is being questioned about are the funding policies. So how are you dealing with this as a board member, but also what are the issues you see?
Yeah, look, I mean, DI, yes, there's a lot of things under attack right now. But what we tell, I talk to the CEO all the time and my organization is we may change the language. We're not changing our work. Yeah. Do not be fooled, okay? Right. As a matter of fact, it is even now more intentional than it has ever been before, right? Because regardless of backgrounds, the problems of access to capital, the problems of grants to support the kind of services that they support, that's not going away. Opportunity has been limited for communities of color and underserved communities. And that is not changing overnight. And so for us, we're looking at this not as a political problem. This is an economic reality that is limiting growth, it's limiting innovation, and it's limiting prosperity for all. So yes, we'll change the way we talk about the business that we do, but we will never change the way we do the business and the people that we serve.
I think it's a great time to ask if there are any questions from the audience. And thank you for that passion. Who has a question? Anybody? And I think people are bringing a mic to you. Thank you. And Danita, if you can't hear, I'll repeat the question for you.
Thank you.
Right.
I just want to make a comment and then ask a question. My comment is that only 1.4% of women-owned businesses ever get over $1 million in revenue versus 5.4% of male-owned small businesses that get there. So I'm not so convinced that entrepreneurship is the only path to wealth. And I don't think that everybody is or should be an entrepreneur. And I think there's a lot to be said for building a great career and investing your 401ks, et cetera. So I just wanted to make that point. But recently I was speaking to a bank, a representative from a bank that's only here in the South, and I asked, how are your loans performing? Because I had recently been in something talking about auto credit defaults, which is not consistent with our first panel, which was a pretty cheery reflection of consumer credit right now. But his response was that their only delinquencies are in CRM, which he characterized as a subprime component of their portfolio. And I think that's a narrative that's emerging in terms of, anti-CRM lending. And I'm just curious, what some of the data is and how you would have responded to that.
Sure. Thank you for that question. And you're talking about CRA, correct? The Community Reinvestment Act? Yeah. Yeah. So, one statistic that I didn't mention, when you look at the percentage of loans or equity that goes to women, 21% of SBA, Small Business Administration loans, goes to women. I bet not many people knew that. 21%. And commercial banks, 4% of their commercial loans go to women-owned businesses. And we all know the number for venture capital, right? That's 2% of venture capital goes to women, right? I will say that I will respectfully disagree with that banker, okay? Any CDFI that you speak with, we have had delinquencies growing after COVID, but when we talk to for-profit lenders that are lending to small businesses, our performance is much better, okay? This year, for example, we're seeing a substantial decline in what we saw during COVID. And depending on the types of portfolio and channels that you look at, we are seeing anywhere from 5% to 7%. Think about the businesses that we lend to. Low credit, thin files, a year in business. Banks generally look at 3 years in business. We look at a year in business, minimum $50,000 revenues. These are very small businesses. They are performing. But I do believe, again, respectfully, that this is part of the narrative around fear tactics and let's scare people that providing capital to these communities is risky, they don't perform. We're on the ground. We are seeing it across the country. That is not the case.
Thank you.
If I may also comment, Virginia, I do believe that there's a large segment of our population in this country that live paycheck to paycheck. And we as women are resourceful and have been, for hundreds of years. And many of the women who head these families are creating their own sources of income in order to survive, whether it's, baking cakes for people in the community or providing childcare services to your neighbor and taking a small amount of money for that.
Right.
Whether you look at that as a hustle or whether you look at it as a true business opportunity is really, I think, what we're talking about. Because we have to create an environment where, regardless of what we're dealing with, we are ready to take advantage of whatever opportunity presents itself. And in my mind, entrepreneurship has been ingrained in the way women have survived in this country for hundreds of years. And I just want to sort of challenge everyone to think about that maybe from a different perspective, because not everybody has money in the bank in order to invest, in order to get a return and create a business that way. So we have to meet people where they are and try to create opportunities and make sure they're ready to take advantage of those opportunities.
Thank you, Danita. You really are.
Good morning. My question is for Luz. You mentioned the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and we've all seen such swift changes that have been impacted these past, I was going to say months, but I guess really month. Have you seen significant changes in the relationships in Silicon Valley in terms of how funds are being directed at Silicon Valley Community Foundation?
I have not seen it I have not seen it at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, but I have certainly seen it in our own organization, where philanthropy was coming from and how it has just shut down. Okay? And that is alarming, right, for many organizations that rely on it for, survival. But we have, it may be a slow trickle-down effect. It hasn't happened yet that I have seen it.
Thank you. I think one more question if you have, please. Yep. Please come on. Thank you.
Hello. Could you talk a little bit more about hyperlocally? What's happening within the small business ecosystem and with women entrepreneurs here in Atlanta, and what you each are doing to sort of support that community and ecosystem?
You go ahead. Yeah.
So we have a digital first CDFI, but we are also place-based in markets like Atlanta, where we see a tremendous opportunity. And this is one market where we have seen the largest growth of small businesses over the last 3 years.
Great.
Out of all the states that we operate in. And the vast growth has come from women and women of color. And we are partnering with Rice Center because obviously what we do and what they do is very complementary. The same challenges, access to capital, banks have restrictions on who they lend to in terms of time in business, size of business, revenue size. And so what we're seeing is we're stepping in to support businesses that, frankly, I was a former banker for 19 years. I'm like, why would you not lend to this business? They've been in business for a while. They've got good revenue. They've got good, cash flow. So we're seeing access to capital being one of the biggest things and limiting factors, frankly, that small businesses are facing. Advising, that's why I love what Rice does, because, helping businesses sort of get into that incubator and go through a very step-by-step process on how to grow and succeed is super important. And that's why we're pairing both, the coaching and advising with capital. But this is a very fruitful market and a lot of opportunity for new businesses, startups.
So here's my ending pitch. All of us have capacity, talent, some treasure to give. Both of these organizations need capital and actually need talent to help mentor. So if that appeals to you, reach out. They're on our IWF website, and please join me in thanking these two fabulous people.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you for the panel. Thank you, Luz. Thank you, Doneda. And I hope that you feel better.
Yeah.
We appreciate you coming. We appreciate you being on screen. Wishing you the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to thank some more of our sponsors who have helped make this event possible. We have our leading sponsors, AT&T, Bank of America, the Coca-Cola Company, Georgia Power, Nelson Mullings, and Southern Gas Company. And we have videos from two of our sponsors, Bank of America, followed by Georgia Power.
Local markets are a fundamental part of how we drive responsible growth.
Across our 8 lines of business and all the places we live and work.
Bringing all our capabilities to the table, we provide a unique advantage to each client.
Delivering the powerful expertise of one team.
Working together to help make the financial lives of our clients better.
We drive organic growth and market share improvement through connecting business flows.
Driving successful referrals and managing the pipeline efficiently.
Listening to our clients and deepening our relationships.
Through high tech and high touch, with a deep understanding of our local markets.
And where we can make an impact.
Because I am local.
I'm local.
We are local.
And together, through our local markets, we deliver for our clients,
Our communities.
and each other.
What would you like the power to do? Bank of America.
We know a little about the difference a little can make. A little kindness. A little extra effort. A little care. Every time you save, it's a little win. And those wins add up to so much more.
Thank you. And supporting sponsors. We also want to thank our supporting sponsors. The Atlanta Braves, Cox Enterprises, Journey Forward, Kaiser Permanente, and ZRG. Thank you for helping to make this possible and supporting the fellows. Are we doing contributing sponsors now? Okay, sorry. Is it a little chilly in here? No? Okay, ignore that, skip it. Go back 15 seconds. All right, breakout slide. All right, so we've had a lot of information. We had context setting, we had data, we've talked about overcoming hurdles, we've talked about the local context. We know that there's a lot of buzz in the room, so we're gonna take a 15-minute break where you can organically turn to your neighbor, share what you've learned, what you've heard, what you're taking away from this, what you'd like to see more of, and we'll come back in exactly 15 minutes, maybe 10. I lied. Make it 10 minutes. 10 minutes.